Hello all, and welcome back to another devlog on C.W.I.S. Last video I went over what the game actually was, and just like showed the last version from the jam that I made ages ago, and just kind of went over some ideas for where I'm going to go in the future with this game. In this video I'm going to show some of the early progress I made since that video. So I've been working on it for about 2 weeks now, give or take. I managed to get a decent amount of progress on the early prototype. The current kind of epic/sprint goal is to get the game back to where it was in the jam version, but just made better. So where am I at with that, you may ask? Well, I've got started, let's put it that way. I've got the basics of shooting done. So in the old jam version, the player kind of inherently owned all the turrets. So the player was on top of all the turrets just sat there as they were, and the player could switch between turret in an enum on the player script. All good and dandy. However, when you need to do multiplayer, that's a bit of a problematic system because you don't know who's controlling what turret and when. So my new solution for this essentially is to have the turrets be their own independent things, and the players kind of inhabit one turret at a time. So when the players try to switch turret, the turret goes, "Oi, I've got a player on me," and just goes, "No, you can't have me," and goes to the next one, and so on and so forth. And all the turrets are in like a list, so they can easily go between each one. The idea being that when the player switches turret, it should just know which turrets the players are actually already on, and it should also just mean that when the turrets are controlled by a player, they should also work at the right time. Hopefully this will be a better system for the multiplayer stuff that I plan to do in the future. However, I haven't got there yet, so this is kind of like just preemptively planning for that stage. So I may end up changing this in the nearby future when I get to actually multiplayer stuff, but for now it's a good enough solution and it does work. I then moved on to actually getting some turrets working, so I want to get the C.W.I.S turret done mostly because that's the biggest turret I have to worry about. It's also the turret that's the most complex, realistically. So starting off with basically aiming the turret, I had to nab the script that I used from the old jam version because it's simply put, it's a bit of rudimental in my mind. Essentially, it's like kind of raycasting onto a plane where the mouse position is and then getting that point and then just turn rotation towards it. The turrets themselves need a bit of an offset by like 90 degrees, which is always a bit of a pain to work with, but it does work. I also, while at it, added a kind of like a clamp thing that means that when the player tries to rotate too far, it stops rotating. The idea being that the player can't then shoot through the ship, which the old jam version you actually could do, which was a bit of a mistake. On top of this, it means I can also add this kind of logic to any turret I like, because the aiming can be clamped at any angle, so I could have the turret at the bottom be clamped differently. I can add new turrets that I clamp to the sides, and I get the idea. So essentially it means aiming is now a bit more accurate, I guess. On top of that, I also added a rotation speed, so the turrets don't actually go towards your mouse exactly on the dot, so they don't just like flip magically to 180 on themselves. Instead, they actually turn, so this could be added as a upgradable feature in the ship. And in whole, it makes it the game a little bit harder because you can't then suddenly turn your turret 360 or 180 or whatever to aim at something else, which is quite a good thing, I think. After that, I had to deal with actual bullets. That's just fun. I had some interesting experiences, to say the least. Some bullets going sideways, bullets going in the wrong direction. Yeah, bullets are fun. Eventually got a version working that actually kind of I like. It essentially uses an object pool. I kind of went with a generic system. First time ever done this way around before, and essentially you just assign an object from the pool and then you return it yourself. So there's no automation, but it also lets you kind of use anything. So the benefit of this is I could use a class rather than a game object as the object it was pooling. Saved me a reference and saved me just a bit of overhead essentially. So instead of having to get component on every object, I just use the script directly, which is very handy to use. So with that system I was able to make the entire thing work, and the bullets can essentially fire. And the good thing is this, I can set an initial size for the object pool and then expand it automatically. Essentially it just automatically makes a new object if one doesn't exist already. Which is a very good system because the player can shoot a lot of bullets very fast, so yeah, it's needed. On top of that, I added a overheat mechanic, which was in the old jam version. I did something different this time. Instead of having it be like integrated into the script for the C.W.I.S turret, I made it a separate class. The advantage of this means I can actually add it to other turrets I want in the future, as well as just edit it much quicker. Also, a similar thing with C.W.I.S turret ammo. So essentially another thing, another class. Essentially you can just edit how much ammo the turret has by default and then adjust it. So the advantage of that is, once again, you can just modularly put it on any turret you like, which is very handy. So with all that in place, I went to add some UI into the game. I kind of mocked up / nabbed the old stuff that I made on the remake that I first tried to remake the game. It's not the UI I'm going to settle for, for the final version, because I think it's going to get slightly in the way of the user and the player might not see it. So I might do something else down the line, but for now this will do for testing purposes. Made a few UI scripts that essentially just modularly used the parts of the turret they needed and showed the right values. Simple as that. So with all that in, it now looks like this. It's quite good. It shoots, you can rotate as much as you like, you can shoot all your bullets, you can actually overheat and then won't shoot for 10 seconds I think currently, but you can obviously adjust that. And the turret can run out of ammo, which is also an important thing for this turret. So then we moved on to the radar, which is always a bit of a fun system. In the old Jam version, it was physics-based, and I went for that again for this version, just for the sake of simplicity. I could do like a radar system, but the problem with that is obviously if the missile is not on the same y-axis, it could go slightly wrong. Had a bit of fun getting the thing to detect things, because essentially Unity physics wasn't actually quick enough to detect them, and also it wasn't detecting the right pairs. The fun with physics, you always get problems like that. Eventually got a system working where essentially there's an arm that rotates, it rotates the same speed as the UI does, and essentially it just scans for missiles. Yep, so I can scan for anything. So I've made a radar icon script that essentially controls an icon. The icon has two methods. One that lets you essentially initialize what happens when you first find it. Another one when you repeat it. So like if it swipes it and finds it again, it'll like flash up some extra UI just to show, oi, there's something still coming in this direction at you. Just so you know. It also helps add a little extra polish to the game because it means you can add extra effects there. So that's always handy. So previously on the Jam version, the ship just had a flat health value of 5, and it just lost health when it got hit. Simple as that, very easy to code and sort out. In this version, I want to make it a bit different, so I want to start with having hitboxes. The hitbox system essentially is going to let the weapons get damaged, which is something I want to add to this game. When weapons get damaged, the idea is they shoot less accurately and they don't work as much. Some might go offline, and some might get totally destroyed and you can't use them at all. The idea being that missiles will then target different parts of the ship, and you have to kind of like defend your ship everywhere possible. So if your ship gets hit too much in one place, you lose that turret. So if your C.W.I.S gets hit a lot, goodbye C.W.I.S. So shortly after the original video, I was actually out for a bit. I was actually in Southampton for a day or two, running the AB 10k. I actually got a PB, which is nice. But apart from that, I also spent a bit of time in the evening before the race, just designing out some of the upgrades. Okay, well, like an upgrade tree system where each turret would have its own custom upgrades based on the turret. So this could be like, for instance, on the C.W.I.S turret, it got like rate of fire and stuff and cooling, which helps with the overheating mechanic. But also like reduced spread, accuracy improvements, stuff like that. And then obviously missiles could have other things like how many missiles you can use, different types of missiles, missile speed, reload speed, stuff like that. Shafts could have a reload speed, stuff like that. You get the idea. There's lots of the upgrades I can do. Obviously, this mechanic's down the line, but I wanted to think of it early on, so it's good to have a little think about it and kind of write out some ideas. So that's all the progress I managed to make this week on C.W.I.S. Obviously, there's still quite a lot to do in this main sprint to get this game back to where it was in the Jam version. Hopefully, I'm going to have a build out by the end of May with that like early gameplay back to where it was, but just improved. The idea is to essentially just make the game in sections and then hopefully just give you guys a build to try out and give me some feedback on it, which is always good to get some feedback. So currently, I'm very much on track for that, with the game like already halfway there at this point, more or less. If any of you have any ideas for the game and want to share them, feel free to share them in the comments below. I always read the comments, and I'm always happy with new suggestions because this game is still very much in early days. So that's about all for this devlog. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.